Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for the Q&As, so let's go ahead and get this started. Alright, first question. Do RDLs, which is Romanian deadlifts, have more carryover to the deadlift over the good morning? It's not that straightforward. It's absolutely not that straightforward. We could argue that from purely a base building perspective, that good mornings tend to improve the squat a little bit more, whereas in Romanian deadlifts tend to improve the deadlift a little bit more. But that's not how it actually works, is it? You'll say, well, what do you mean? Whichever one hypertrophies your weak links the most, or your movement pattern problems the most, is what's going to carry over. So when you start looking at these supplemental lifts in that way, you don't understand programming. And you don't understand how to build your weak links. If your adductors are really struggling in the squat, the Romanian deadlift might actually be better, right? If your erectors are the weak link in your deadlift, the good morning might be better. And then we've got to factor in the different styles of good mornings. The Romanian deadlift is a single movement, right? Unless we go with bands or chains, we could make a Romanian deadlift into 3 movements, with accommodating resistance. Good morning is like 20 different exercises. So we would tune those based upon our different needs, wouldn't we? And I mean, I could argue that even as a general base builder, say a straighter leg dead pin good morning with any bar probably has great carryover to the deadlift. It will even base build a deadlift just as well as an RDL. And the thing to remember, these are both exercises that increase both. If we're talking about accessory work to increase your squat or your deadlift, both of these movements have the ability to increase both of the main lifts. And that's something we need to keep in context here. From a hypertrophy perspective, again, it's going to come down to where do you need the muscle the most. On basic movements, at their base, they are similar because the good morning teaches you how to box squat. It teaches you how to perform the eccentric on a box squat correctly, right? Romanian deadlift tends to be really good for teaching you to keep tight through a lot of people's common sticking point just below the knee. So in that regard, there's movement pattern carryover. But when it comes to the nuances of it, it isn't that straightforward because it really depends on the individual lifter and where their weak links are at the moment as to which one's going to be best. And again, keeping in mind the good morning is a very versatile tool. It's not just one exercise. All right, next question. My flat and incline bench has been stuck for a long time while my overhead press is pretty strong. I've noticed that I've always done pause on overhead press, but never my bench. My triceps are pretty damn big in comparison to my chest. I started doing pause recently and the weight significantly dropped, 30 to 40%. Should I keep doing pauses? If so, can I start doing pauses on pretty much all my lifts? Thanks, coach. Oh man, I think we know what the problem here is. You have a weak pectorals. You might have weak lats too. Here's what I'm going to recommend. Here's what I'm going to recommend. Assuming you're a relatively advanced lifter. Now, if you're a novice, you need to just follow a novice program. Okay, and quit goofing off writing your own stuff. Assuming you're no longer a novice, you need to be doing pause benching. Do you have access to dumbbells? I would do dumbbell benching. You can do it at different angles, decline, flat, incline. I would do some decline benching. Okay. Floor press. I would start working some wide grip floor press. Now, when I say these things, I don't mean you need to do all of them at once, because you don't want to come in and do dumbbell presses, pause bench, and floor press in the same workout. I mean that you can rotate these into waves. Okay. But you need to do these things. You need to be working on pause bench, floor press, dumbbell presses. This would behoove you. And the pause is your pause bench is going to come up quick. I suspect if you went down 30%, look, let's put it this way. If you benched 300 touch and go and all of a sudden 225 is your 1 rep max when you pause, your 300 was not touch and go. You bounced that off your chest like a trampoline and you shot your ass up into the air. And then you used your triceps to help lock it that you built from all the overhead pressing and tricep work. Okay? You didn't actually bench 300. You probably could only bench 250 touch and go. Just throwing that out there. Start doing the pause work. Learn to get tight. Build them teddies up. Right? You need to get fat in the teddies. All right, next question. How does lactose compare to fueling workouts compared to other carbohydrates such as starches like rice and potatoes, given that the person has no issues with dairy? Lactose can't fuel your workouts at all, just like fructose can't fuel workouts at all. Your muscles cannot burn either one of these. Your muscles need glucose. Now, that being said, does that mean you couldn't get most of your carbohydrates from lactose? Of course you can. Your body needs time to convert it into glucose. And now again, assuming you have no dairy issues, no lactose intolerance. I was going to say, if you drink a bunch of milk before you train and you have lactose intolerance, it's going to interfere with your training. You bet, because you're going to get gastrointestinal distress. But here's what we're looking at. What we are doing by getting a little bit of carbohydrate in before we train, right? What are we doing with that? We're just trying to ensure a steady fuel supply for our bloodstream. Our muscles are already running. For training purposes, your glycogen stores are generally what we're burning. Okay? So if you have decently replenished glycogen from previous meals, you're pretty good there. What we're trying to avoid is the rest of your body tapping back into those too much while you're training, right? In other words, you want to have a steady fuel supply going. And so again, it's one reason I don't recommend training fasted. You need additional fuel to fuel the rest of your body so that we're not liberating glycogen stores to do other things. Because once you're fully fasted, that's what you're running on. You're running on liver and muscle glycogen. And it's just better overall that if the other systems outside of our muscle are getting a new fuel supply, you end up getting better performance. Like we know that. But I'm not overly concerned with the carbohydrate source there. If you have decent muscle glycogen already that you've stored from previously eating, even if you train really early in the morning, like let's say your pre-bed meal, it's not really a problem of what type of carbohydrate you decide to eat, as long as it's something that's keeping a continual flow there. It really isn't that important. And the thing to remember, all of these carbohydrates turn into glucose through one form or another in the body before we can use them as fuel. It's just a question of, does your GI tract do it or does your liver do it for you? That's the only difference that we're looking at. But the lactose is fine. If you tolerate it well and you want to drink a little bit of milk pre-workout, it's not really a problem. Not really a problem. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.